Standing up in McKinney, this is According to Callus. We're back. It is the 22nd of July, the year of our Lord 2024, stepping in with episode 669. Now, I got to tell you, it's been a very interesting week. I know I had teased maybe putting out a best of. I couldn't devote the time to doing that. I took a much needed vacation with my wife and one of my daughters, and we went to Branson, had a great time. It is the family friendly version of Vegas, but no gambling. That being said, what a weird week it was. So, for the purposes of this, I'm going to make an extra episode or two this week. I know I had scaled back. I was going to do 3 episodes a week, shoot at about 40 minutes a pop. I'm not sure how long this episode's going to go or the next couple, so no promises there, but I'll be clocking in at a minimum 30 minutes, I think. But for today's episode, we're going to riff off of the phrase from Laurel and Hardy. For those of you that are older than I, this is another fine mess you've gotten us into. Or if you prefer, the title is going to just be, This is a Fine Mess. So over the course of a week, from Saturday through Sunday, meaning yesterday, we almost lost both of our candidates for president. You know, they took the shot at taking out Trump, and then they successfully took out Biden, as far as we know. I mean, that was the most crazy thing I'd ever seen, where there was a post on X indicating that he was not going to run for re-election. And now he's being praised by his fans and questioned by his opposition as to why he wouldn't just resign now, because if he's not capable of running for re-election, he's probably clearly not capable of finishing. That being said, I mean, don't hold your breath. All right, so the day before I was set to depart, the news came down. Somebody took a shot at the former president, soon to be next president. And, you know, I was really worried. I mean, one, I'm not excited about the idea of the former, soon to be next president being assassinated. That's crazy. We're supposed to be better than that. We're supposed to be able to fight over politics, but not actually shoot each other over politics. Although I suppose if you are a leftist and you really truly think that he is the embodiment of Hitler and the old yarn about being able to kill Hitler as a child, would you do it? And if you really truly saw the Donald as the embodiment of Hitler, I guess I understand where maybe you could justify that action. Don't agree with you. I think you're wrong, but I could maybe get there, maybe understand it. But in fairness, the Donald, while he might be a bit of a braggadocious guy, he might like to talk in hyperbole all the time. Fascist, not really. No more so than any of the, every president that's been elected since I've been alive has been a fascist. Totalitarian, I mean, he'd have to work to reach the levels of the Big O, and I don't think it's obtainable to get to the levels of Wilson or Lincoln. But, I mean, again, I understand the commentary. I understand some of the fear, the psychosis. I mean, and we've got never Trumpers still that are Republicans, and we've got, leftists. So, I saw a lot of things. Oh, this just won the election, or that photo is going to get him across the finish line. Yeah, there's a whole lot of time left. I mean, we're looking at 4 months. A whole lot can happen. Now, I'm not going to be voting for Biden or Harris or the Big O's partner or anybody with the name Hillary. But that being said, there's a lot going on here. I mean, so Trump gets shot at. And look, there are people that are far better at dissecting what happened there. I mean, you got that Bongino guy. I mean, look, I'm familiar with who he is. I won't say that I've invested any time in listening to him. I mean, I believe in independence, and I believe that people should be able to speak their mind and speak freely. I'm just not sure a guy like that is who he says he is. That being said, he does have a good show, that which I've heard of it. A lot of people do use him as a resource. I'm not going to dismiss him. I'm not going to disparage him. I'm just not going to go out of my way to run my life off of what he thinks or says. Much like I wouldn't want you to do that for what I think and what I say. I just want you to consider what I'm saying in light of what have you observed, what have you seen, what do you think, and do the things coexist? Am I giving you new information that you are not aware of? Am I giving you a different way to consider something? I don't think that anybody should be anybody's guru, whether it's on the radio, a podcast, or TV. I get very suspicious of that. So that being said, the Donald, Mr. Trump, there's a lot of folks that are borderline doing Messiah complex stuff on this guy. Yeah, I'm out. I'm going to say that he's definitely the less evil, or the one that's going to lessen the evil, if you will, of what's going on in D.C. if he should be elected. He is the best chance to not have more wars. He's the best chance to do some reforms that favor business. He's the best chance to have not crazy leftists appointed to the Supreme Court or other federal courts. He's the best chance to maybe recenter the United States, these United States, right? That being said, he was the president when nobody thought it would happen. He lost, at least on paper, in 2020. I don't believe that for 1 second that was a straight up legit election, but that's an entirely different story. We're just going to set that aside because at this point it's moot, right? We've gone through 3.5 years of Sleepy Creepy Joe. Not a single court case has been brought to bear for various reasons, most of them utter BS, and they've successfully ruined and or bankrupted a number of people that were held in high esteem because they tried to make something out of this. So all I will say on this matter is whether he won or lost is irrelevant. He is eligible in 2024, and I'm confident that he'll win. And I'm very confident that there is not another candidate that's going to have a D after their name that is a better option. Much like there was a significant lack of any better option with an R after their name. Now, look, I like Rand Paul. I like his dad, Ron Paul, even more so. The conservatarian, or whatever the term is now, I'm all in. I think that's the way to go. Philosophically, ideologically. But the fact of the matter is, we can't win a general election as a conservatarian. We can't win because we don't bring it. Now, the closest thing in between there might be Mike Lee. I would suggest perhaps Ted Cruz. That's threading the needle between the two streams. But even then, as much as I like Ted, as much as I'm going to do what I can to get him reelected as a senator in the state of Texas, or for the state of Texas at D.C., I'm fairly certain that he cannot win a nationwide election. And setting aside whether or not he's truly eligible or not, because that's going to be an issue that's going to come up when dealing with Kamala. And if it's not, that's another problem altogether. So we got Trump that literally dodged a bullet. And he hasn't lost any steam. And quite frankly, the Republican National Convention was a good show. I didn't watch any of it, but I saw some of the highlights. And whatever misgivings I might have about J.D. Vance, and I think there's a couple legitimate questions there. Do I think he's a great choice given the options? Yeah. He's probably the best choice to win in 2024 and potentially have a future move. Now, that being said, I mean, I believe he's better than any other neocon option. The fact that Karl Rove is ticked off or upset is all the more. It's like, wow, I was already sold, but now I'm really sold because Karl Rove doesn't like him. I mean, I'm not sure why there's anybody left in these United States, much less the state of Texas, that gives any credit or any esteem to anything that Karl Rove has to say. I mean, it's fair to say our own governor probably ought to dismiss the direction out of Karl Rove. Now, whether or not he will, that's a different story. But as it looks now, Trump's got the nomination. He did a good job at the convention. Some have critiqued his hour and a half long speech. Yeah, but here's the thing. There are very few people in this world that can keep rapt attention of a bunch of people in a convention hall at the end of 4 or 5 long, grueling days, speaking for an hour and a half, some of it off the cuff. Yet he did it, and he did it well. So maybe you didn't like this or that, or maybe you want to question this or that. Well, that's fine. You have every right to do that. But my question always is, but what would you do? Or do you have a better option? And the answer is clearly no, we do not. This is what we got. So you dance with the one that brung you. I mean, honestly, if he's half as competent as he was during the first term and twice as wise as he was in the first term, which would be, I would say he lacked wisdom in the first, but he was very, very sharp. If he keeps his sharpness and has wisdom, I mean, to me, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a guy that's got the right ideas, that brings in the people in his inner circle, people that he can trust and depend on, that give him good advice, and he has the wisdom to know what's good advice and which is garbage. Not a fan of John Bolton, not a fan of any of the neocons. Quite frankly, I've got a lot of concerns about a lot of different people that work in D.C. or live in D.C., and by that I mean the entirety of Northern Virginia and Maryland. That being said, he's the best option we have. So as we pivot over to what played out yesterday, still haven't seen Sleepy Creepy, right? Where's Joe? We're going to just replace Where's Waldo with Where's Joe. I think they made the decision for him. Because Jill was all in on pushing him around. Certainly the rest of his family has a very strong vested interest in keeping him in as the president. And it seems to me they would have done pretty much anything to keep him there. And yet he put out a post on X saying he was going to give it up. I find that hard to believe. At least the explanation that we're given, I find that hard to believe or understand. But again, perhaps what is done is done. So Kamala or Camilla or whatever our preferred pronunciation is or whatever her pronoun is, look, if that's the best they got in the Democrat Party, I mean, you can say what you want about Donald, but at least he was a former president. At least he was a very successful business guy. At least He's extremely competent at what he does. I'm not even going to bring up the sordid history of Miss Harris or Mrs. Harris, whatever that situation is. I don't know. And then to me, it's very depressing because I know a lot of people that have a D after their name, and they say it's about the policies. They say it's about the principles, but I think a lot of times it's personal. And I will say the same is true with the people with R after their name. But when you're going to run off memes with "I'm with her," I mean, it was one thing when it was Hillary. At least it was plausible. By the time she ran, I mean, she had something. Harris was appointed as a senator, essentially. I don't remember if she won a term after that or not. It really doesn't matter. It's Democrat California. I mean, the only difference... No, there is no difference. You could literally slap a D after any old jackwagon, and they would probably win, as long as they had the power elite behind them, which is what she did. Remember Willie Brown? Yeah, okay. So, I'm not sure. And, you know, when she was the attorney general, she made her bones, if you will, or how great she was, based on destroying people's lives for doing the very same thing that she had done when she was younger. And they're touting her experience as the vice president. She's been vice president for 3 years now. The one thing she was given authority and control over has been a complete mess, and she's a joke. But we're ready to make her the president? I mean, her gaffes are almost as good as her boss's gaff, or her former boss's gaffes. What are we supposed to think about this? I mean, are we just at the point now where we're scraping the bottom of the barrel? I mean, Biden at least had a long track record, multiple runs for president, and they just kind of gifted it to him. But Harris, come on. I mean, look, there are lots of mean things that could be said. There are lots of disparaging things that could be said. I'm going to try to avoid doing that. I know in the past I've riffed on a couple of those things, and I kind of think they're fair play. I mean, you're running to be the president. You are the sitting vice president. I hope you have rhinoceros skin by now. I really do. I would say elephant skin, but they're Democrats. But you know what I'm saying. So we're now dealing with the issue here that there are going to be a whole lot of people lining up with "I'm with her" shirts because she's lacking testicles. I mean, that's her greatest claim to fame. That maybe she's got a slightly darker skin tone than I do. Or maybe her mother came over from India. I mean, I don't know. Daughter of immigrants. I mean, that sounds great. It really does. But again, yeah, you've done some things. You've got an interesting resume. But are you what's best for these United States? Are you going to be a net positive for these United States? Now, Biden, in my opinion, clearly was not. Whether he won fair and square or not, he's been there. He's been doing the job, or at least posing as doing the job for the last 3 years. His handlers have done a pretty good job of putting on a show for us. But what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with... let's just say, at best, questionable situation here, where a guy that ought not be president, that isn't physically and mentally fit to serve, and finally acknowledge that in the sense that he's not going to run for another term, but yet he's still there. And we're supposed to take his advice on who the next president should be. I mean, just think about that. Yes, I'm old. I'm incompetent. I'm not even sure what day it is, and they have to wipe my butt. But I'm telling you, my vice president's the best person to take over. I mean, how is that not a terrible endorsement? I mean, even Barack, the Big O, and his partner have declined endorsing her at this time. Now, we could end up with some shenanigans at the Democrat National Committee or Convention, excuse me. I would like for there to be a discussion. I would like for there to be a debate, because I know there are a lot of Democrats that were perfectly okay with Sleepy Creepy getting another 4 years, even though he was barely competent, because he had done the job already and they felt they owed it to him or whatever. And there really wasn't any serious contender running against him. But now we're going to just go ahead and put Kamala in charge? I'm sorry. I have no faith in that. I have zero respect for that. Now, I would say, and there's going to be some people out there dismissing my comments because I'm a guy. Oh, you can't talk about women. Well, fine, whatever. And then there's going to be some people that want to bring up she doesn't look like me, doesn't talk like me bit. Again, don't know, don't care, whatever. I mean, realistically, if you set aside the constitutional restrictions on who the president could be or should be, the requirements, if you will, and there's not a whole lot of requirements, natural born citizen of these United States being one of them, I would actually be perfectly fine with Ted Cruz. Yeah, I know, he's a dude, but he's not a white dude. Obviously is smarter and better educated than I am, and he's got a pretty solid track record there. So yeah, I'm gonna nullify that complaint. And truth be told, there was probably 2 or 3 women that would be up for the job historically, but they're not running. And if you ask me to name them, I mean, as much as I would hate the policies, and as much as she was totally skating on her husband's name, I think Eleanor Roosevelt probably could have done a decent job. I mean, Hillary, for that matter. I mean, the brains in those couples were definitely siding with the wives there. I'm just saying, it's kind of a historical anomaly. Edith Wilson pretty much ran the country when her husband had a stroke, and we went along with it. So it's not like this hasn't been an issue or hasn't happened before. But realistically, there's a short list of people that I would be enthusiastic about giving the mantle of essentially an elected king. We shouldn't have that, but that's what we have. So I find it very interesting. They nearly took out the Donald, but he survived. Gave a little fist bump, said fight. Great. Awesome dude. Totally eclipses anything that Joe can do. Rocks on through the convention, knocks it out of the park for purposes of this discussion. Speaking for an hour and a half and doing it off the cuff in large part, while keeping everybody's attention. And Joe doesn't even know if it's time for ice cream. So they force him out, right? The Democrats created their own coup number 2, if you will, that we know of. And now we've got Kamala. Now, look, there's already been comments and memes out, right? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. The puppeteer's still the same. There's all these different things to be said, and to a degree, I believe they're true. But we're putting the future of these United States in the hands of the cackler. This woman was given one job. The vice president was made the border czar. Let me ask you, are things better at the border now than they were 3 years ago? That's a real simple question. Now, you can argue the economy, and in fact, I'll probably bring that up a little bit next episode. But suffice it to say, I had a little back and forth on the social medias. I think people don't understand that just because inflation is now down on 3.5%, allegedly, the official numbers, doesn't negate the fact that previously it was at 9.8%. Before that, it was at 4.8 or 5% or whatever that is. That's all cumulative. So over the course of 4 years, if prices went up 30%, figuring cumulative, all that put in there, and that's just their acknowledged cost changes. And then the same person was dismissing this math because, hey, I'm okay, I'm making more money and my 401k is growing, all the while saying that all the corporations are making too much profit. Well, the reason that you're making money for your 401k is based off of corporate profit. So let me ask you, do you want to kill the corporate profit? And if so, why? In taking the time to explain something conceptually, you can have record profits based off of a percentage of profit, but if the money is worth less, is it really a record profit? I mean, if the money is worth 30% less than what it was 4 years ago, and you're making 3 or 4% higher profit than what you were before, right? And we're looking at gross profit here. We're not talking about the percentage of profit. Say a corporation might want to net profit out 2 to 3%, maybe 4% is their goal, whatever. Let's just say it's 5%. But if that 5% didn't go up by 30%, which would be what, another 1.5%. If you're not making 6.5% profit, you're not making 30% more. The dollars may be 30% more, but because the dollars are worth 30% less, approximately, you're not making more. There's no record profits there. So I'm really not sure where this is getting lost in translation here, but it is. And it boils down to the idea that there's really no rest, right? We went into 2020 with a scandemic, plandemic, and the current president, which would be the Donald, got bamboozled into doing some bad things or allowing bad things to happen, mostly led by terrible governors and even some marginal governors that made bad calls. And we got pushed and we nearly destroyed our economy. We ran it into the ground. We locked people up. We destroyed an entire year's worth of learning. We put young people 2 years behind. And because now we have growth, when we nearly cratered into nothing, now because we have growth, we're going to credit that growth to the awesome recovery and to the great decisions made by the successor president? On what world does that work? The entire government came together, came up with a really, really bad policy. They took us from, I don't know, I'm going to make numbers up here. Why? Because it's just illustrating an issue. You had 100 million people that had good paying jobs. At the end of the pandemic, scandemic, and all the other shenanigans, let's just say 20% of those really good paying jobs went away. Now you've only got 80 million people with really good paying jobs. Previously you had 100 million. That's a 20% loss. And normally you might get, let's call it 5 to 8% growth. I mean, over the course of a term or whatever. Let's just be kind. Let's say it's 10%. But because now you have 12% growth, keeping in mind you lost 20%, you got a 12% growth over the last 3 years. You're still behind where you were when you started because of those really stupid bad policies. And now you want to credit just a return to normalcy as being a great accomplishment? Give me a break. It's sad to see that people buy the stuff. It's sad to see that people are going to be just fine with Kamala. Why? Well, because she's a woman. Or, well, oops. Or any other crazy thing that you want to give me for an excuse. Now, it is well known, and again, I'm going to wrap this up here real quick here, and then I'm going to give a brief announcement. And I got a new ad for you. Most people do not vote based upon principles or parties, but principles or philosophies, right? They're basing their vote on passion, their feelings, their emotions. They make these choices on a gut feeling, perhaps. Now, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's going to have a long-term positive effect, but that's what we're dealing with in reality. Now, you can spend a lot of time educating or motivating people to go out and vote and think beforehand and make intelligent, wise decisions, but it doesn't mean that they will, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful in convincing them. People don't always use their head. So sometimes you have to consider what else is at play here. This is where marketing comes into play, right? Marketing means everything, unfortunately. And that's what we got to do a better job as Republicans, as conservatives, as Christians, as conservatarians, whatever you want to label yourself as. We have to do a much better job of marketing, telling our story. What do we do? What are we offering that the other people are not? How do we do a better job than they do? What are we going to do to protect you and your family? That's what we need to look at. The question is, how do you do that? Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? That's the thing you got to work on. All right. End of episode. About 31 minutes in. Okay, so we're going to make a brief announcement here, something I think you need to be aware of. For a long time, I've been an advocate for Texan. And I kind of got called out on this by somebody I know, saying that, well, sometimes you're a stronger advocate than others. Sometimes you push it a little more than what you would. I said, well, no, actually what it is the thing that I'll argue over, the thing that I'll fight for, if you will, is a vote. The people deserve a vote. They need to be heard. Their voice should be heard. It is the right thing to do. If you're not willing to essentially offer it up for a discussion, if you're not going to have a debate, which would lead to a vote, my supporting it or not supporting it or my thinking it's a great idea is now irrelevant and moot. I've always been honest. I think the best solution is de facto independence rather than de jure independence. Not to be that I would be opposed to de jure independence. Not that I think de jure independence is a terrible thing, but I think we get the best of both worlds. But my concern is we don't have that possibility because we don't have a culture of independence. I mean, we barely have a Christian culture as it is. So, that being said, there is an opportunity for you. If you're hearing me now, essentially 5 days from now, July the 27th, there is a Texit Blueprint seminar or meeting going to be in Greenville. So you can go to tnm.me. You can go to Google, Texit, Bing it, whatever your preference is. Go search it out. It's in Greenville, Texas, which is less than an hour from where I live in Collin County. If you're in Dallas, you can probably make it there in about an hour as well. The cost at the door is going to be $75. It includes lunch and beverages and snacks and stuff. So it's well worth your time for a day. Now, here's the thing that I want you to understand. Daniel Miller is going to be there. He's going to give his sales pitch for Texit, but he's also going to be there to explain, well, how do we do some of these things? How does this work? How do we address these things? He's going to be there to answer your questions. So, like, if you've got a guy like I do in Collin County that's an elected official that immediately dismisses anybody that's for this as a traitor, a seditionist, which, come on, that's stupid. It's stupid. It's stupid, childish, but that's what he does. This is an opportunity to go have the discussion, to learn something. I mean, I think there are lots of legitimate questions. I think there are some legitimate concerns. I think there is a rightful fear that if we go our own way, that what's left of these United States would go down the toilet fast. I think those are all very interesting and interesting questions. We'll just stick with that. Interesting questions. But you deserve an answer. You should be heard. This is an opportunity to go learn. And even if you're opposed to it, even if you think it's a bad idea, wouldn't you like to be better educated on what the position is, what the questions are? And if you support it, but you don't know why, or you support it and there's people that ask you questions that you can't answer, this gives you an opportunity to brush up, to better understand. Now, I'll also say, I imagine most of this is already covered in this book. So if you've read the book, maybe you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I don't need to go pay $75 at the door. It's cheaper if you do it ahead of time, but we're kind of coming to the end of that. Maybe it's a little cheaper to just buy the book and call it good. But this is an opportunity to network, meet with, discuss, and converse with people about these very important issues. It's a understanding is where you want to go. You want to get to an understanding of what's at play here. I'm just not sure that you're going to know everything unless you do something like this. I mean, yes, a book's nice and gives you lots of things, but I think it's a better option. I think if you've got the time, if you've got a Saturday that you can set aside, and maybe you've read the book, maybe it was years ago, maybe you're not super familiar, I think it's worth your time. You should go check it out. And just so we're clear, I'm not getting anything for this. They don't even know that I'm putting this out. It's just because I want to. It's because I think it's valuable information. It's useful to you as a Texan. Hey, and look, if you live up in Oklahoma and you got the time, you can make Greenville in about that same hour, depending where you're at. You know, if you're over in Durant or, you know, by Lake Hugo or Broken Bow, come on down. You can learn about it because you know what? If we go, Oklahoma might want to come along too. I'm just saying. And I've met some people from up in Oklahoma and we've talked about it. I think it's a great idea. Again, check it out. Go to tnm.me or go just Google or Bing or whatever your search engine is. Go find, Texas Blueprint. Again, July the 27th, Greenville, Texas. Check it out. Okay, one last thing. I have an ad for you. There's an outfit called Texian Pride. They make t-shirts, hats, that kind of stuff. Basically pro-Texas. We love pro-Texas here at According to Callus. I think you should go check out Texian Pride. And their ad will be playing as soon as I'm done here. So until then, I will see you on the other side.
TexianPride.com is the destination for Texans who want to show off their love for Texas. We don't settle for mediocre. Our shirts are made from 100% high-quality athletic cotton. They're cool, comfortable, and designed to fit and flatter any body type. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Visit TexianPride.com for your next stylish Texas tee.